My sister smiled at me across a room full of white tablecloths, crystal glasses, and people who had known my family for decades. And then she said, "Elena is finally going to do the right thing today." I was 38 years old, standing near the dessert table at my parents' 40th anniversary brunch, holding a folded napkin, like it was the only thing keeping my hands still. My mother, Diane, wore her pearl necklace and that soft public smile she used when she wanted cruelty to look like grace. My father, Robert Whitaker, stood beside her in a navy suit, glowing with the pride he always saved for my older sister Claire. Claire was 2 years older than me, polished from her blonde waves down to her cream heels. She had been the golden child for as long as I could remember. That day, she stood at the front of the country club dining room, like she had already won. Dad lifted his glass and laughed. Elena has always been better with chores than decisions, so today, we're helping her let go of a burden she was never meant to carry. A few people chuckled. My mother looked at me and sighed like I had disappointed her by breathing. "Honey, don't make this difficult. This is about family." Then Claire placed a leather folder on the table beside the anniversary cake. Inside it was a trustee resignation and a property agreement they expected me to sign in front of everyone. They wanted me to hand over control of my grandmother's trust, her lake house, and her rental properties, so Claire could protect what Grandma built. But what Claire did not know was that I recognized the kind of folder before I ever touched it, and what my parents did not know was that Claire had already signed a different paper years earlier. One notarized signature, one document she never bothered to read, one paper that quietly took back everything she thought belonged to her. Before I tell you how that room went silent, and why my sister's perfect smile disappeared, I need you to understand something. Families like mine do not break in one moment. They train you for the breaking. They teach you to accept the smaller humiliations first, so when the big one comes, you almost mistake it for normal. And if you have ever been the daughter who was useful, but never chosen, stay with me, because this is the story of how I finally stopped confusing loyalty with surrender. To understand that brunch, I have to go back to the house where Claire and I grew up. My father, Robert Whitaker, built his reputation in real estate. He was not a millionaire in the way he liked people to think, but he knew how to wear success. He loved polished shoes, firm handshakes, and sentences that began with, "In this family, legacy matters." My mother, Diane, cared just as much about appearances, church luncheons, charity events, matching Christmas cards, perfect flower arrangements on the front porch. She could make our family look warm in a photograph even when the house felt cold inside. And then there was Claire. Claire was the daughter who sparkled. Pretty, confident, charming, the kind of girl teachers forgave and relatives praised before she even opened her mouth. If Claire forgot homework, she was overwhelmed. If Claire cried, everyone moved toward her. If Claire failed, someone found a reason it was not her fault. I learned early that my role was different. I was the dependable one. I cleared plates after parties while Claire posed for pictures. I remembered Grandma Maggie's prescriptions when my parents forgot. I sat quietly in the back seat while Claire told stories. I fixed things, carried things, organized things, and swallowed things. If I asked why Claire got something I did not, Mom said, "Elena, don't keep score." But they were always keeping score. They just never counted me. Our family's real security came from my grandmother, Margaret Whitaker, though everyone called her Maggie. She owned a lake house in Vermont, 2 rental properties, and a careful investment trust she had built slowly after my grandfather died. Grandma Maggie was not flashy. She wore soft cardigans, kept handwritten notes in the kitchen drawer, and noticed what other people ignored. Especially me. When I was 15, she once found me washing serving dishes after one of Mom's parties. Claire was in the living room being praised for her piano recital, even though she had skipped half her lessons. Grandma Maggie picked up a towel and dried plates beside me. "You know, Elena," she said quietly, "people show you who they are when they think nothing is at stake." At the time, I thought she was just trying to comfort me. Years later, I would realize she had been warning me. Because in our family, Claire received cars, tuition help, wedding money, business loans, sympathy, and applause. I received responsibility. And for a long time I told myself responsibility was a kind of love. But deep down, a question had started growing inside me. If I stopped being useful, would they still see me as their daughter? Part 2. The first time I remember understanding my place in the family, I was 16. Claire had taken Dad's car without permission to go to a party in West Hartford. She hit a mailbox backing out of someone's driveway, cracked the bumper, and came home crying with mascara down her face. I was asleep when it happened. I had nothing to do with it. But the next morning, Dad stood in the kitchen in his robe, holding his coffee like a judge with a verdict. "You should have known she was upset," he said to me. I stared at him. "I was in bed. You're her sister, Elena. You're supposed to look out for her." Claire sat at the counter wrapped in Mom's cardigan, looking wounded and innocent. Mom rubbed her shoulder and said, "She's been under a lot of pressure." That was how it always worked. Claire made the mess. I became responsible for the cleanup. When I got a scholarship in high school, I thought maybe that would be my moment. My guidance counselor called it impressive. Grandma Maggie mailed me a card with $20 inside and underlined the word proud 3 times. But Mom looked at the date of the awards ceremony and frowned. "That's the same evening as Claire's pageant rehearsal," she said. "Can they not move it?" I remember laughing because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Dad came to my ceremony late, stood in the back, checked his phone, and left before pictures because Claire needed help choosing a dress. That night, Mom said, "You know we're proud of you, honey. You just don't need as much attention as Claire does." For years, that sentence lived inside me like a rule. I didn't need attention. I didn't need comfort. I didn't need anyone to show up. At Claire's wedding, I worked harder than some of the paid vendors. I called the florist when the centerpieces were wrong. I found the missing place cards. I held Mom's hands in the ladies' room when she panicked about the seating chart. I fixed Claire's veil 10 minutes before she walked down the aisle. During family photos, the photographer waved me over. Claire touched his arm and smiled. "Let's do immediate family first. Elena can be in some later." Later never came. When the album arrived, I was in 3 pictures, one carrying a box, one bending over a table, and one blurred in the background behind Claire's cake. As adults, the pattern became more expensive. Claire opened a boutique that sold linen dresses, candles, and things she called curated home goods. It looked beautiful from the street, and lost money almost immediately. Dad said she had vision. Mom said women like Claire needed support. Grandma Maggie helped once. Then again. Then Dad asked me to look over the lease because I worked around property contracts. "Elena is good with boring things," Claire said, smiling like it was a compliment. When Todd, Claire's husband, made a bad investment in a friend's restaurant, my parents whispered about it for weeks. They said Todd was embarrassed. They said Claire was fragile. They said I should not mention anything at Thanksgiving because family protected family. But when I needed help moving apartments after a pipe burst in my old building, Mom said, "Can't you just hire someone?" Then Grandma Maggie's health started to decline. That was when the truth became impossible to ignore. Claire posted pictures with her online. She would arrive with flowers, take a selfie beside Grandma's chair, write something like, "Cherishing every moment with our queen," and leave before dinner. I was the one who stayed. I drove Grandma to cardiology appointments. I sorted her pills into the plastic organizer with blue lids. I sat beside her hospital bed under fluorescent lights while machines hummed, and Mom said she couldn't handle medical smells. I paid small bills when statements got lost. I slept on Grandma's couch when she was scared to be alone. And still, at family gatherings, Diane told people, "Claire is so busy building a life, Elena doesn't mind helping." I minded. I minded more than I admitted, but I loved Grandma Maggie. And maybe some quiet part of me believed that if I kept showing up, my parents would finally see the difference between being reliable and being disposable. They didn't. What they also didn't see was that while they were treating me like the family assistant, I was building a life they knew almost nothing about. I worked as a compliance manager for a regional property firm. It wasn't glamorous. No one at my parents' dinner table wanted to hear about lease audits, insurance clauses, tenant notices, or trust administration. Claire once said, "I could never stare at paperwork all day. I'd die." I just smiled. Because paperwork was not dead to me. Paperwork told the truth when people lied. Contracts remembered what charming people forgot. Signatures mattered. Dates mattered. Transfers mattered. The exact wording of a sentence could protect someone who had no one else in the room willing to protect her. During Grandma Maggie's final years, she started asking me to help organize her files: old deeds, bank statements, insurance folders, rental agreements, tax letters. She kept everything in labeled boxes in the den, beside a lamp with a cracked green shade. "Elena," she said one afternoon, her voice thin but steady, "your father likes to speak as if everything is already his." I looked up from a stack of papers. She was watching me carefully. "It isn't," she said. "That was how I first met Martha Ellis, Grandma's estate attorney. At first, I thought I was just there to carry folders and take notes, but Grandma wanted me to listen. She wanted me to understand what was real and what was only family performance. Later, Grandma revised her trust. She didn't cut Claire out in anger. That would not have been like her. She simply documented what had already happened: the wedding money, the boutique bailout, the loan that saved Todd from a lawsuit, the checks that had been called gifts when Claire wanted them, but forgotten when inheritance came up. Claire signed a beneficiary advancement receipt and release 8 years before that brunch. I still remember seeing the copy later, her name written in her perfect looping signature, Claire Whitaker Hart. She had accepted those earlier payments as her share unless Grandma changed the trust again in writing. Grandma never did. Claire signed because Dad told her it was just bookkeeping. And because people like Claire never imagined paper could say no to them, that document sat quietly for years in Martha's office, waiting, and none of us knew yet how badly my family would need me not to remember it. Martha Ellis did not look like the kind of woman who could change the temperature of a room. She was in her early 60s, with short gray hair, small gold earrings, and reading glasses she wore low on her nose. Her office was on the second floor of a brick building downtown, above a dentist, and across from a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon in the mornings. Nothing about her was dramatic. She did not raise her voice. She did not flatter people. She listened carefully, then said exactly what needed to be said. The first time Grandma Maggie brought me there, I thought I was only helping her carry files. Martha looked at the 3 labeled folders in my arms, then at Grandma. "And this is Elena?" she asked. Grandma smiled. "This is the one who remembers where everything is." It was such a small sentence, but it stayed with me. In my family, remembering things had always been treated like a service I owed. From Grandma, it sounded like a strength. Over the next few months, I sat in Martha's office more than once. I learned what a successor trustee was. I learned why trust property did not become family property just because the loudest person in the room called it legacy. I learned that good documents were not cold. Sometimes they were the only warm thing left when people started rewriting the truth. After Grandma passed, Martha called me in alone. There was a box of tissues on the desk between us. I remember that because I kept staring at it, determined not to need one. "Elena," she said gently, "your grandmother trusted you because you were steady, but legal authority means very little if you let your family shame you out of using it." I looked down at my hands. "I don't want to fight." "I know," she said. "That is why they will expect you to lose." That sentence hurt because it was true. My other anchor was my friend Naomi Reed from work. Naomi was the kind of woman who noticed when your smile got too practiced. She had curly dark hair, a laugh that filled a room, and absolutely no patience for people who used the word family as a weapon. One night, after Mom called me selfish for refusing to cover another repair bill Claire had promised to handle, I drove to Naomi's apartment and sat in her kitchen without taking off my coat. Naomi put a mug of tea in front of me and said, "You know being a daughter is not a contract for unpaid emotional labor, right?" I laughed, but it came out broken. She let me sleep in her spare room that night. In the morning, she didn't ask me to explain everything again. She just made toast and said, "You don't have to earn rest." Between Martha and Naomi, I began to understand what it felt like to be seen without performing usefulness. Then my parents announced the anniversary brunch. Mom called it a celebration of 40 beautiful years. She said it would be at the country club, Sunday at 11, white flowers, family photos, a slideshow, champagne, and a small moment to honor Grandma's legacy. That phrase made my stomach tighten. Grandma's legacy. In our family, those words usually meant Claire was about to receive something while I was expected to smile. The calls started 2 weeks before the brunch. Mom asked me to confirm the seating chart because she said I was better with details. Dad asked if I could bring framed photos from Grandma's house. Claire sent me a list of tasks, like she was assigning duties to a bridesmaid. Can you check the slideshow? Can you make sure Aunt Louise has a chair near the restroom? Can you bring copies of any trust documents Dad might need? You're the organized one. Love you, love you. 2 words after a list of demands. At first, I told myself I was being too sensitive. Then Dad called and said, "We need unity on Sunday, Elena. No legal stiffness. No making Claire feel like a guest in her own family." I was standing in the grocery store aisle, holding a carton of eggs, when he said it. "What does that mean?" I asked. He sighed. "It means your sister has carried the Whitaker name beautifully. It's time the paperwork reflected the heart of the family." The eggs felt suddenly heavy in my hand. That night, an email landed in my inbox by mistake. It was from Todd to my father, with Claire copied, and my name included only because Todd had hit reply all to an old thread. I read it twice, then a third time. Todd wrote that the developer needed clear control before moving forward with interest in the lake house land. He said my resignation as trustee would solve the optics. Claire replied that the brunch was the right place because I would not cause a scene in front of everyone. My mother added one sentence. "Elena will do what's best if she feels the family is watching." I sat at my kitchen table until the room went dark around me. They were not inviting me to celebrate. They were setting a trap with flowers and champagne. The next morning, I brought the email to Martha. She read it silently, her expression barely changing. Then she opened her desk drawer and took out a clean copy of Claire's signed release. "Your sister already made her choice," Martha said, sliding the paper toward me. "The question is whether you will finally make yours." On Sunday morning, I chose a simple navy dress, low heels, and no jewelry except Grandma Maggie's small silver bracelet. I placed the trust folder in my bag, not because I wanted revenge, because I was done being the only person in my family expected to honor the truth quietly, while everyone else performed a lie out loud. The country club dining room looked like my mother had designed it to prove nothing ugly could happen there. White roses sat in low glass bowls on every table. Gold-rimmed plates gleamed under the chandeliers. A slideshow of family photographs played silently on a screen near the fireplace, one perfect image after another. Claire on vacation, Claire at graduation, Claire in her wedding dress, Claire standing beside Grandma Maggie with her arm around her shoulders like she had been there every day. I saw myself twice. Once half hidden behind Dad near a Christmas tree, once cropped so close to the edge of the frame that only my shoulders showed. Mom had seated me near the side of the room beside Aunt Louise, who needed help getting to the restroom. Claire and Todd sat at the head table with my parents, laughing softly with Robert's old business friends, as if they were already the next generation of the Whitaker name. I told myself to breathe. Then Mom stood with her champagne glass. 40 years, she said, smiling at Dad. 40 years of love, family, and legacy. Everyone clapped. She thanked guests. She thanked the church ladies who helped with flowers. She thanked Claire for always representing this family with such grace. Then she looked toward me, and Elena, she added, for helping behind the scenes, where she's always been most comfortable. The laugh that moved through the room was gentle, polite, almost harmless. That made it worse. Because cruelty does not always come with shouting. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in manners, and everyone calls it charm. Claire stood next. Her cream dress caught the light when she moved. She spoke about Grandma Maggie's strength, about family property, about honoring what had been built before us. Then she said, "Some of us understand legacy because we were raised to carry it." Her eyes flicked to me. "And some people are better at paperwork." Todd smirked into his glass. I felt the old heat rise in my face, the same feeling I used to have as a girl when Mom corrected me in front of company. My body remembered humiliation before my mind could name it. Then Dad took the microphone. "This family has always believed in doing what is practical," he said. "And after much discussion, we've decided Claire is the right person to oversee Maggie's lake house and the rental properties going forward." My fork went still beside my plate. He turned toward me with that public fatherly smile. "Elena, honey, Come up here. We just need you to sign a few papers so there's no confusion later. The room shifted, chairs creaked, faces turned. Claire picked up a leather folder from beside the anniversary cake and placed it on the small table near Dad. Todd leaned back and said just loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "Let's not make this awkward." I stood, because my legs moved before I decided what to do. The walk from my table to the front of the room felt longer than any hallway I had ever crossed. I could feel every eye on me. Relatives, neighbors, people who had watched me carry coats, refill coffee, drive Grandma to appointments, and disappear from family pictures. Dad opened the folder and tapped the top page. "It's just a trustee resignation," he said, "and an agreement to cooperate with the property transfer." "Transfer to whom?" I asked. Claire laughed softly. "Elena, don't do this." Mom's smile tightened. "This is not the time." Claire stepped closer to me, her perfume sweet and sharp. "You've been holding on to things that were never really yours. Grandma would want the family represented properly." I looked at her. "Meaning you." She tilted her head, then she said the sentence that finally broke something cleanly inside me. "Some daughters are born to shine, Elena. Some are born to serve." The room went quiet, not protective quiet, curious quiet. Everyone waited to see if I would cry, argue, or fold. But something strange happened inside me. The shame rose, reached its old place in my throat, and then stopped. It had nowhere to go. I had carried it too long. I looked at my father. "What exactly are you asking me to sign?" He frowned, annoyed that I was making him say it clearly. "A resignation of your trustee role and a cooperation agreement giving Claire authority to move forward with the lake house and related properties." "And if I don't?" Mom whispered. "Elena." Claire's smile stayed fixed. "Then you prove what we've all been trying not to say." I waited. She said it anyway. "That you care more about control than family." That was the moment I reached into my handbag. Not for a pen. I took out Grandma Maggie's trust folder and placed it on the table beside theirs. The sound was soft, but somehow it cut through the room. Dad's face changed first. I turned to one of the servers standing near the doorway and said, "Could you please ask Ms. Martha Ellis to come in? She's waiting in the lobby." Mom's mouth opened. Claire blinked. Todd sat forward. And for the first time all morning, no one laughed. Martha entered less than a minute later, calm in a charcoal suit, carrying her own folder. She looked around the room once, then stood beside me without touching my arm. She did not need to. Her presence was enough. Mom forced a brittle laugh. "Martha, this is a family celebration. Surely this can wait." Martha looked at the folder on the cake table. "If legal documents are being presented for signature, then no, Diane. It cannot." Claire crossed her arms. "Elena brought a lawyer to Mom and Dad's anniversary party. That tells everyone what kind of person she is." I looked at Martha, then at my father. "I only need one thing confirmed," I said. "Does Dad's announcement match the actual terms of Grandma Maggie's trust?" Martha opened her folder. "No," she said. The word was plain, small, devastating. She explained that the lake house and rental properties were trust assets, not Robert's personal property, not Diane's, not Claire's. Grandma had named me successor trustee after her death, which meant my job was not to obey family pressure. My job was to protect the trust according to its terms. Claire's voice sharpened. "Grandma wanted me taken care of." "She did take care of you," Martha said. Then she lifted a copy of a document I knew by heart. "8 years ago, you signed a beneficiary advancement receipt and release." Claire stared at it, like it was written in another language. Martha continued, calm and precise. "This document acknowledges funds advanced to you for business support, wedding-related expenses, and debt settlement connected to your household. It states those advancements satisfied your share of Maggie Whitaker's estate, unless later amended in writing." Todd's face drained. Claire said, "I didn't know what that meant." Dad snapped. "It was bookkeeping." "No," Martha said. "It was notarized." Mom turned to me with tears already forming, the kind she could summon when an audience was present. "Elena, you can waive this. For your sister. For family." And there it was. Not regret. Not apology. Only another demand dressed as love. I looked at the folder Claire had pushed toward me, then at the signed paper in Martha's hand. For 30 years, they had treated my silence like permission. But that day, in that beautiful room with white roses and polished silver, I finally understood something. A signature could surrender power. It could also return it. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The room still smelled like roses, champagne, and buttercream frosting, but it no longer felt like a celebration. It felt like a courtroom, pretending to be a country club dining room. Claire's eyes stayed locked on the paper in Martha's hand. Then she looked at me. "You planned this," she said. Her voice was low, but everyone heard it. I shook my head. "No, Claire. Dad planned this. Mom helped. Todd knew. You all brought papers here and expected me to sign them in front of people who didn't know the truth." Dad's face turned red. "Enough, Elena." For once, I did not flinch at his tone. "No," I said quietly. "Not enough." Aunt Louise, still seated at the side table, whispered, "Robert, what is she talking about?" Dad ignored her. Martha stepped forward, not dramatically, just enough to make clear that this was no longer a family performance. "Mr. Whitaker, I need to be very clear. You do not have authority to transfer trust assets. You do not have authority to remove Elena as trustee, and you certainly do not have authority to promise trust property to a developer." That last word moved through the room like a cold draft. "Developer?" One of Dad's old business friends repeated. Todd looked down at his plate. Claire turned toward him. "Todd." He said nothing. I looked at the guests, then back at my family. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came here because my father tried to turn my parents' anniversary brunch into a legal ambush. Mom put a hand to her chest. "How can you speak to us like that? How could you ask me to sign away my legal responsibility beside an anniversary cake?" I asked. Her mouth closed. Martha read only the parts that mattered. Grandma Maggie's trust named me successor trustee. Claire's advancement release was signed, dated, witnessed, and notarized. The money listed was not small. Boutique funding, wedding rescue money, a settlement payment connected to Todd's bad investment. Each item had been documented. Claire's face changed with every line. The perfect daughter was still standing there, but the story around her was cracking. A cousin near the back said, "Diane told us Elena was blocking Claire out of jealousy." Mom turned sharply. "This is not the time." "It became the time when you invited all of us," my cousin said. Claire's voice broke into anger. "Grandma loved me." "I know," I said. She looked startled, like she expected me to deny it. "She did love you. That's why she helped you. Again and again. But love is not the same as endless entitlement." Claire's eyes filled. "You took care of her so you could get all this." That hurt. Even after everything, it still hurt. But I did not let it take over my voice. "I took care of Grandma when you came for pictures and left before dinner," I said. "I took her to appointments. I sorted her pills. I slept on her couch when she was scared. I did those things because I loved her. Not because I was waiting for a prize." Dad slammed his hand on the table. Silverware jumped. "You will not stand here and shame your sister." I looked at him then, really looked at him. The man who had spent my whole life teaching me that obedience was love. "You brought me up here to shame me," I said. "You just didn't expect me to bring proof." The room went completely still. Mom started crying then. Soft, practiced tears. "You're destroying this family, Elena." I turned to her. "No, Mom. I am not destroying the family. I am refusing to be the daughter you sacrifice, so the story stays pretty." Claire covered her mouth. Todd stared at the floor. Dad opened his mouth, but no words came out. I picked up the folder they had placed beside the cake. I did not open it. I slid it back across the table toward my father. "I will not resign as trustee. I will not sign a cooperation agreement. I will not authorize the sale, transfer, mortgage, or use of Grandma's trust property for Claire's debts, Todd's deals, or your public image." Martha nodded once. I continued, my voice steady, even though my hands were cold. "From today forward, any questions about the trust go through Martha's office. Any attempt to contact tenants, developers, banks, or brokers about trust assets without authorization will be documented." Dad whispered, "Elena, think carefully." "I have." I said. Then I looked at my mother. And the informal payments stopped today. No more maintenance bills handed to me through guilt. No more reimbursements for family events. No more asking me to quietly clean up what Claire publicly receives credit for. It was not a speech I had practiced. It was just the truth finally standing up straight. I left my copy of the trust summary on the table and turned to walk away. Claire whispered my name as I passed her. For 30 years, that would have stopped me. That day, I kept walking. Behind me, Dad called, "Elena." But it did not sound like command anymore. It sounded like fear. The consequences did not arrive like thunder. They arrived like mail. 3 days after the brunch, Martha sent formal notices to my parents. Claire, Todd, and the developer Todd had contacted. The letter stated that the lake house and rental properties were trust assets, that I was the acting trustee, and that no one had authority to market, pledge, transfer, or represent them without written approval. The developer backed away by lunch. The bank that Todd had been courting suddenly needed more documentation he did not have. Claire called him careless. Todd called her family reckless. For the first time, their polished marriage started showing its seams in public. Relatives began reaching out. Quietly at first. My cousin sent me screenshots of messages Mom had written before the brunch. In one, Mom said, "Claire is the true heir. Elena is just being difficult with paperwork." In another, she wrote, "Once Elena feels the room against her, she'll do the right thing." I sat at my kitchen table reading those words, with my coffee going cold. I thought I would feel victorious. Mostly, I felt tired. Robert lost face among the men he used to impress with talk of property and legacy. People in real estate understood what it meant to promise land you did not control. Diane lost control of the story because too many guests had seen Martha read the truth. Claire lost the image of the deprived older daughter because everyone now knew how much Grandma had already given her. But I lost something too. I lost the last soft little hope that if I explained myself clearly enough, my parents would finally understand me. I changed the access codes to the lake house. I moved trust records into Martha's secure office. I hired an accountant to separate expenses properly. I stopped paying bills that had been slid to me under the word family. Then, one evening, my phone lit up with a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was shaking. "After everything we've done for you," she said, "how can you do this to your sister?" I listened once, then I deleted it. Because she still did not understand. I had not done this to Claire. Claire had signed the paper. I had simply stopped pretending it meant nothing. After the brunch, my family did not become honest. They became strategic. Mom started with guilt. She left voicemails in a soft, wounded voice, saying Claire might lose her home. Todd was under pressure, and I had humiliated my own mother in front of friends. "You could have handled it privately," she said. That almost made me laugh. They had chosen the room. They had chosen the audience. They had chosen the folder beside the cake. They only objected when I stopped being the only person embarrassed. Dad tried authority next. His messages always began the same way. As your father, I expect you to reconsider. As your father, I expect you to call your mother. As your father, I expect you to remember who raised you." But one message ended differently. "If you force my hand, I'll challenge the trust." I forwarded it to Martha. She replied with one sentence. "Let him communicate through counsel." Claire waited almost 2 weeks before texting me. Her message was long, full of childhood memories she had never cared about before. She mentioned matching pajamas, summer trips, Grandma's apple pie, and how sisters were not supposed to end up like this. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry I called you born to serve." Not once did she say, "I'm sorry we tried to trap you." Not once did she say, "I'm sorry I let them treat you like the help while I called it family." She only wrote, "Maggie would hate this division." I stared at that line for a long time. Then I typed back, "Grandma also hated people signing documents they refused to honor." I did not send anything else. Naomi came over that night with takeout and sat on my living room floor while I read the messages out loud. She did not tell me to forgive. She did not tell me anger was unhealthy. She just listened, then said, "They don't miss you. They miss access." That sentence settled something in me. The next morning, I sent one email to all three of them. All legal questions would go through Martha. All trust business would be in writing. Personal contact needed to stop for 90 days. Any harassment would be documented. My hands shook before I pressed send. Then I pressed it anyway. A week later, Claire showed up in the lobby of my apartment building. The front desk called me and said my sister was crying downstairs. For a moment, the old Elena woke up inside me. The Elena who would grab her keys, rush down, apologize for pain she did not cause, and offer comfort before asking for accountability. But I stayed still. Then I went downstairs slowly. Claire stood near the glass doors, mascara smudged, hair pulled back in a messy knot. She looked younger somehow, smaller. "Why do you hate me?" she asked. I felt the question hit the oldest bruise I had. "I don't hate you," I said. "I'm just done shrinking so you can feel chosen." She cried harder. But I did not invite her upstairs. That was the boundary. Months passed. Life became quieter. At first, the quiet felt strange, like I had forgotten something important. Then I realized what was missing. The ringing phone. The emergency favors. The family group chat turning my name into a task. The guilt that used to arrive before breakfast. I repaired the lake house instead of selling it. I hired local workers, replaced the rotting porch boards, fixed the roof, and kept Grandma Maggie's blue kitchen curtains because they still smelled faintly of cedar and lemon soap. One of the rental units needed updates, and I worked with Martha to keep the rent fair for Mrs. Alvarez, an older tenant Grandma had always cared about. That felt like legacy. Not speeches, not champagne, not Claire standing under chandeliers pretending love meant ownership. Real legacy was protecting what someone built without using it to crush someone else. At work, I accepted a senior compliance role I had almost turned down twice because I was always too drained by family chaos. Naomi threw me a small dinner to celebrate. 6 people came. No one asked me to serve. No one handed me dishes. When I started clearing plates out of habit, Naomi gently took one from my hand and said, "Sit down, Elena. You're a guest here." I nearly cried over that. Martha stayed in my life too. Not like family exactly, but like a steady witness. Once, after a trust meeting, she said, "The dramatic part is usually short. The dignified part is what you practice afterward." She was right. Dad never truly apologized. His threats faded once lawyers explained the trust was clear. Mom sent holiday cards with guilt tucked between polite sentences. Claire eventually sent one short message. "I should have read what I signed, and I shouldn't have said you were born to serve." I read it 3 times. Then I put my phone down. Maybe that was the beginning of something. Maybe it was only the first honest sentence she had ever sent me. I did not rush to turn it into forgiveness. I had learned that peace does not require reopening the door. The signed paper took back the inheritance Claire thought was guaranteed, but it gave me back something bigger: my name, my time, my voice, my right to stop proving I deserved a place in a family that had only valued me when I was useful. The last time I visited the lake house, I sat on the repaired porch as the sun lowered over the water. The air smelled like pine and rain. Grandma's bracelet rested against my wrist, cool and light. For years, my family called me difficult when I asked to be seen. Now the silence around me felt different. It did not feel like being ignored. It felt like finally belonging to myself. And if you have ever been the person your family used, blamed, or only called when they needed something, I hope you remember this. Sometimes the moment you stop serving their story is the moment your real life begins. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment and tell me where you would have drawn the line. And if you know someone who needs to hear that boundaries are not betrayal, share this with them. Because the truth does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, on one signed piece of paper.